Hello and welcome to Cheers to Fears, where we take horror films and turn them into drinking games. We're your two hosts. I'm Alex.
And I'm Tucker. Today we will be making a drinking game for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, released in 2022. It was directed by David Blue Garcia, and the screenplay was written by Chris Thomas Devlin. The people who created the story were Fede Alvarez and Rodo Sayags, who've made other movies such as the Don't Breathe films and the Evil Dead remake.
In Texas Chainsaw Massacre, sisters Melody and Lila move to a ghost town called Harlow. They and their friends move there to revitalize the town and make it their own. When doing so, they kick an old lady out of her home who ends up having a heart attack and dying on the way to the hospital. Her adopted son turns out to be Leatherface and starts attacking and murdering anybody he can get his hands on.
I know we are a little late to the party since this movie was released over a month ago, but since this was a movie that was released in this year, we are going to try to be as spoiler-free as possible. But we may have some slip-ups here and there. We will also be showing clips used in promotional scenes such as the trailers. For those of you that want to go into the movie completely blind, we will post our drinking rules on screen now.
Let's move on to the first rule as always, which is death. And again, because it's a new movie, we aren't counting totals for this, but we can say that it's quite a few, to say the least.
Yeah, there's at least one scene in particular that you even see in the trailers, with the bus scene, that is going to be mercy ruled that I can think of off the top of my head. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of death. It's a quote-unquote slasher film, so expect a lot of death.
I'd say the deaths are fairly quality.
Yeah, oh yeah. Most of the deaths I enjoyed. They were fun.
Yeah, it's one of the upsides to the movie for sure.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on to rule number 2. It's whenever you hear somebody scream, cry, or yell. Again, because it's a slasher film, there is a good amount. It's nothing too crazy or anything. It's just, there's a lot of screaming in slasher movies, so... We did notice, however, that a lot of the times the characters were kind of trying to be quiet by covering their mouths so that they could hide from Leatherface, but even that aside, there's still going to be a lot of screaming.
Yep, definitely. Let's move on to rule number 3, which is whenever you see a chainsaw. There were some obscure ones in this movie, such as souvenirs.
Yeah, like little keychains, for example.
Yeah, little keychains.
Nothing else really to add to that, so we'll move on to rule number 4. It's whenever somebody is being rude to another person, excluding Leatherface. And the reason we added this as a rule is because, like, a lot of the characters are just straight up unlikable and you kind of want to see them die. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, like, usually with slasher films, you don't care much about the characters. They don't give them any backstory, but these ones were just kind of annoying and you actually wanted them to die.
Oh, yeah. So. A lot of the characters, which, like, in a lot of slasher films, there's some characters that you're like, oh, this character's stupid. But I feel like the way that these ones were made was to be intentionally hated.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that was the main purpose. So not just chainsaws as a rule, but it's also guns, because whenever you see one of those, you take a sip.
Yeah, and obviously there's quite a few guns in this movie that we noticed. Mm-hmm. And it also kind of goes along with the backstory for Lila being a school shooting survivor.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of the modern take that they kind of intertwine throughout this movie. Mm-hmm. And personally, I wasn't the biggest fan on the way they executed it. I liked the idea of it, and I thought it was a good idea, but just the way it played out was kind of weird to me, how she was kind of... It kept showing this flashback or whatever to where she was laying on the ground, scared of this guy, the school shooter, and then all of a sudden she's just comfortable being around guns and shooting guns and stuff, and I don't know.
She wasn't comfortable. She was pretty afraid, except when her life depended on it.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know, I don't know exactly what it was. I can't put my finger on it, but something felt off to me about it.
I think it was done fine, since it was very, I'd say, somewhat under the radar. It wasn't like so glorified, like in every scene, it's like, oh, you're shooting Lila, you have past trauma. Like, she tried to do things, like she attempted to pick up the gun and hold it, but couldn't. So there was, like, her trying to grow beyond it.
And speaking about modern takes, it moves us on to the next rule, which is whenever somebody is on their phone. And it's kind of an interesting aspect to the film because they're in this ghost town, and the people that are even in this town are kind of old-fashioned, or I don't know, they're just, like old-fashioned is the best way to describe it, such as Leatherface or even Richter, I'd say. Mm-hmm. And they don't have anything to do with like new modern technology and stuff, and then they're seeing all these young kids with their phones coming into the city, and it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and there's self-driving cars and everything like that.
Yeah.
Especially the one scene where the one guy's just holding up his phone, or I guess everyone's holding up their phone to Leatherface, saying like,
try anything and you're canceled, bro.
you're gonna get canceled, bro.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know what a phone is, and just rips off their heads.
Yeah. And that's kind of something that they did in the film, was it seemed at first that they were trying to like enable cancel culture, or like, you know, have a statement about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden they, you know, Leatherface then turns around and just immediately kills the guy that says it. So like there was a lot of, it seemed like it was going to be cancel culture or, you know, woke commentary or something, but then it just like shut it down right away.
Yeah, and like I feel like that's kind of one of the funny things for the movie. They tried to kind of realize how these people like have nothing to do with it. Like they know that it's wrong, and they're like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna fucking kill you.
Exactly.
I feel like it was an interesting take to try to apply to a serial killer who clearly doesn't give a shit. So let's move on to the next rule, which is whenever you see a wide open highway or field, you take a sip. This happened, I'd say, quite a few times throughout the very beginning of the movie.
In the beginning, yeah. And honestly, there's not anything else to say. It's a pretty straightforward rule. Happened a lot in the beginning, but we'll move on to rule number 8, which is whenever Leatherface is shown on screen. And one thing to note is that he appears pretty quickly in this film. Like, they don't wait. They just jump right into it pretty much. And I like that aspect, that they didn't keep us waiting, because everybody knows what to expect, that Leatherface is going to be there. So I like that they jumped right in with that. But one thing that I wish they kind of explained a little bit more was, like, how did he get to become an orphan?
Yeah, I really don't know, and I feel like that's a very open-ended part for the movie.
Yeah.
And the other thing along with it, I feel like it could have just been like another script for a completely different movie, and then they just like slapped Leatherface on there.
Maybe. But we also know what happened with the original director and what happened, so maybe that had something to do with it. They kept that idea staying the same and just changed a little bit off that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I felt like it just was kind of left way too open and not explained very much.
Moving on to rule number 9, which is whenever Sally brings up something from her past, such as Leatherface, her friends, or even pictures of her friends are on screen, you take a sip.
50 years I've been waiting for this night. Just to see him again.
Yeah, anything along those lines. And I have to just come right out and say it. At first, I was like, hey, that's Sally. That's kind of cool that they brought her back. But then as it went on, I'm like, wait a second. This is just Halloween 2018 redone. And also, it doesn't really make sense the way that she handled the whole situation. Like, I don't want to get into too much detail, but it just wouldn't play out the way that it did. And I guess, spoiler alert, she dies, and it's like they tried to do the Halloween thing, but then flip it on its head and be like, oh, we did something different. And I after I thought about it and rewatched it, I was like, yeah, I didn't like it.
Her whole story arc could have just been completely removed.
Oh,
they didn't even have the original actor, and that was rather
she's
upsetting.
Passed away.
Yeah.
And I wish they didn't even bring that in. Like you said, it could have been scrapped completely.
That entire storyline could have been scrapped. It had nothing to do with anything. The only real thing I could think of is trying to connect it with Lila and her trauma and Sally's trauma. That's the only thing.
Yeah, but
it was done so poorly. They had like maybe 1 or 2 exchanges about that, if not only one.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then she was killed off.
Yeah, exactly. So clearly we weren't biggest fans of it, but I don't know if many people were.
I don't think so.
But anyways, we'll move on to the final rule of this drinking game. It's whenever the deed to the house is mentioned. There's not much to say about this. It's just the deed to the house that they bought, that they kicked the Leatherface's mom out of, foster mom out of. Nothing really to say about it.
Yeah. So there was no totals for the movie just because it was a new movie. So obviously find that out for yourself, how many the total was.
Yeah.
But it was a lot worse than expected in terms of drinking.
Yeah. I mean, I expected it to be a lot just because typically the slasher drinking games that we do are a lot more. But yeah, like right at the beginning was the fields, like we mentioned,
fields,
or
the highways.
And then there was so much death. People on their phone. Like, even Leatherface coming on screen, that happened quite a bit.
With his chainsaw, the chainsaw memorabilia, there was a lot of things.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of them come in clusters at times, so be aware of that, I guess. Be prepared, I guess.
Like, just one scene alone, there's 5 phones and 5 deaths. So
Yeah,
that's
and a
just
chainsaw.
and a chainsaw, and lots of screaming. So there's a little bit to look out for. There's even another chainsaw in the scene. But yeah, it's a lot of drinking, to say the least.
Yeah, and it kind of goes, I guess we'll talk about the movie now and what we thought about it a bit. I feel like it was a good movie considering how production went. Like, we lightly touched on it, but basically, in short, it was so bad that they just scrapped it, got a new director, and then sold it to Netflix.
They sold a mainline series movie to Netflix.
Yeah.
Which, like, you'd never see with Scream. You probably wouldn't see with, like,
most
movies, like any Jigsaw movie, the Saw movies.
Yeah.
No Halloween movies would do that. But they did it for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, and that says a lot.
Yeah.
To be fair, a lot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies were not good. So I think this is one of the better ones, but that doesn't mean it's like a great movie.
No. Yeah, I agree. It wasn't really a great movie. Like, it was a fun movie to watch for sure.
Yeah.
But some of the problems, for example, the characters, we talked about how annoying they were and we wanted to see them die. And we were happy to see that Leatherface killed a large chunk of those people.
Yes.
So, like, even though they did have those annoying characters, there was some kind of payoff to it because we watched them die. As I guess it doesn't sound too nice of us to say, but it's the truth. But there were some good characters that I kind of liked, like Lila Richter, for example. I kind of thought he was an interesting character. And even Leatherface, I thought, was handled pretty well in terms of how he looked. He looked big and brutal and, like, you know, just the overall scary looking guy, I guess.
Yes.
So I feel like they did a couple things with the characters pretty well.
Yeah, no, he definitely looked pretty big, menacing for the most part. I wish there was a little bit more of scenes between Richter and Lila, but that didn't happen all that much.
Yeah.
Speaking of Leatherface, though, deaths were fantastic. It was, I'd say, the selling point to the movie.
Well, it's the reason you watch this movie, honestly.
Yeah.
If you weren't watching it for the deaths, you would not enjoy this movie one bit, I would say.
Oh yeah, I'd say so. So since this is just such a stereotypical slasher film, there's not a lot to talk about without directly going into spoilers.
Yeah.
So let's move on to final thoughts. Tucker, what did you think?
I thought it was a very fun movie to watch. It's like you said, it's a typical slasher film. There's annoying characters that get killed. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And you're there, you know, if you know what you're gonna get, you can have a good time with it, honestly. As far as Texas Chainsaw sequels go, this one was pretty good. It wouldn't be my second favorite. Obviously, the first one is the all-time best.
Hands down.
Yeah,
hands down, without question.
And I think my next favorite right after is the second one that follows it. But this one honestly might be third. I would have to rewatch a lot of them, and I don't know if it would. I'm pretty sure I would put this one above the 2003 remake. But yeah, overall it was just a fun movie that I kind of went in knowing what to expect, and I had a good time with it.
Yeah, the only ones that I remember watching in recent memory were, I believe, the original, the 2003 remake. I think I watched Leatherface, and I think I watched the 2010s ones.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And then obviously this one. This is This is my second favorite, anyways.
Okay.
I don't remember many of the other ones, so yeah, the earlier ones especially in the franchise. However, I think this is great slasher, bad film. Is the best way to describe it. If you want to watch a slasher, watch this. If you want to watch a film, don't watch this.
Yeah, if you want to watch a film for the story, don't watch this.
Yeah.
And now this would usually be the point that we would give out a Darwin Award, but since this movie is brand new, we don't want to be giving one out for this episode just because, again, we want to keep it as spoiler-free as possible. But if you think you know of a Darwin Award winner that definitely deserves the award, let us know in the comments below, because we're curious to know what you think.
And with all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our look into Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you end up playing the game alongside the movie, or if you have any other feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. Also, let us know in the comments what you think of this movie compared to the rest of the sequels that have spawned.
Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss next Friday's episode, which lands on April 1st. And we definitely don't have anything up our sleeve. It's just regular scheduled program, just a normal episode. If you want to check out our episode on the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, click on the box on the top right. Or if you want to see a playlist of all the drinking games and movies we review, click on the box below it. Thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying, cheers to fears.